Hey! Okay, so it's not often that I do a video where I defend somebody, but it's gonna happen now. I watched one of those Watch Mojo videos, and it was about the top 10 dancing, which I kind of have to agree with somebody that they needed to break it down with the 50s, 60s, 70s, with decades. And I was reading the comments, and quite honestly, I have to agree with a lot of people with the stuff that they were talking about and everything. It was pretty tame. But there was one in particular where they started, they said that they weren't really excited about Ginger Rogers. They said that she wasn't that great of a dancer and everything. But then the thread just continued. And this one person in particular said that she was a former, they were a former dancer, and said that the reason that Ginger wore long dresses was to hide the fact that she was a bad dancer. I don't believe that you are a dancer at all, that you ever danced, because first of all, going in going in for the kill. First of all, the routine that they talked about was cheek to cheek in the Watch Mojo video. And okay, that was in the 30s. That was a style of the time. And there were a lot of other, excuse me, I don't have anything to drink at this time. This time I don't. So we're just going to have to deal with my scratchy throat. But there were a lot of other dance videos, not just, movies of the time. It wasn't just Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. There were a lot of other dancers of the time, and they wore that. That was a style. So to say that it hid that she was a bad dancer, no. No. Try again. Absolutely not. That was a style. It wasn't like she was breaking a fashion thing and that was her thing to do. No. Absolutely not. Where did you get that? Where did anyone get that? If that's a thing that's going around, no. No. Okay, when it comes to Ginger Rogers, here we go. Ginger Rogers was in vaudeville. Okay, not at a young age, not like Fred Astaire, who, as a young child with his sister, they had a routine. I know that the parents weren't part of it. I don't believe they were anyway. Not that I remember. Now I'm going to freak out a little bit. I'll put in the description if they were. Not like Buster Keaton where it was a family thing. Because a lot of times, like Judy Garland, her family was a part of it for a little while. And then the family kind of drifted. And then it seems like it was just her and her sister for a while. But yeah, Judy Garland was also in vaudeville. But when it comes to Ginger, she was part of vaudeville later in life. Seems like teenage and 20s. She was also on Broadway. Now, she and Fred Astaire met on Broadway, and they did a show together. Now, it's a little fuzzy, but it seems like they weren't on stage together. Seems like one of them was on stage and the other one worked backstage and on this particular show, or they were both backstage, or anyway, this particular show, and I don't remember the name of the show, they both crossed paths. And then later on, now she was pretty lucky because you also have to think that this was during a time when you were part of a group, be it singing group, dancing group, what have you, a performing group, like acrobats or something. And there were quite a bit of that. There was quite a bit of that going on. You were pretty much in, you pretty much had an in Hollywood. But if you were solo, it was a little more difficult, but it depended on your look. And I know that sounds a little rude, but because poor Fred Astaire, he was rejected a lot. And I think it was about 4 or 5 times. And they made every excuse in the book. He's too old, he's too bald, he's too tall. I remember reading that in almost every biography I've read of him. And I think even his autobiography said that too. But he made it. And you know, the funny part is that he's one that retired about 4 times. And in fact, I think the last Academy Award that he was a part of, it was him and oh shoot, I don't remember, but they were trying to get him to dance, and he kept saying he wasn't going to dance. And as he was walking off stage, he danced. He couldn't stop. But you know, when you grow up doing it. Anyway, when they came over to Hollywood, she was part of a group. It was 2 other ladies and herself, and she was pretty lucky. She got in pretty fast with Hollywood. But he was having a dickens of a time. But their paths crossed later. So, you know, because he had, I think his first partner was Rita Hayworth, if I remember right. But, you know, I could be wrong about that. But anyway, so when they were together, now she, you have to understand, was praised by Freddie to the day he died. And of course, he said good things about his other partners, but she was praised. Ginger was praised. And when I read up on the biographers, because of course they research other people and they interview other people for the biography, you don't really see that much anymore. You know, it's bogged down with opinions anymore. They don't care about facts. I can say that because I've read some crap biographies lately. They just want to put in their personal opinions about somebody, and there have been biographers who get in trouble for that. May want to stick to facts. But it used to be that the biographers would interview the people that were around, you know, and especially with these icons. And so some of the people that worked with Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, they said that, like with Ginger Rogers, she had no problem with flowing between the dancing scene and the acting scene. It wasn't choppy at all. It just, and part of that had to do with her vaudeville. Now, she wasn't the only one that was like that, but it was really easy with Fred Astaire. I guess that there were a few that it they had to teach that. And so it kind of cut into their filming because they had to teach. Don't chop, you know, just flow. No breaks. Don't break it, just keep going. And that can be a little irritating, especially when you've got film and you can't, you know, you don't want to waste film trying to, and that sort of thing. So there was that praise, especially. That one stood out. And the other thing was, one thing that Fred Astaire was quoted saying was, she never cried. Well, I knew exactly what they meant. I mean, me being a former dancer, oh man, when it comes to practice sessions, I've read some horror stories on practice sessions, and I've been part of a few practice, especially when it gets close to performance. It can get really bad. my dance instructor could get intense. She, you know, she's a nice lady and she knows what she wants. You know, I'm sure that she's, you know, now that she's retired from her teaching job at the schools, I'm sure that she's more laid back. But when she had the teaching job at the school, and then of course she comes over and teaches at the studio. I'm sure that that it was just, oh man, stress. And we got it. And but she would have a certain idea, and there were times that we weren't understanding what she wanted, and that just made it all the more irritating. Well, and in modern dance, it didn't really make sense to us, but when you see it on stage, it makes perfect sense. But with us, it's like, that's not clicking. And she would get so mad at us. Because a lot of times with modern dance, a lot of times it's, like designs and stuff on stage. And I didn't understand that until one of my cousins came to watch, and he's like, no, it looks really cool on stage because of how you're moving and everything on stage along with the music. And I'm like, oh, I guess I get it now. Not really. But I can remember us complaining and everything, and having fits and and she's like, just do what I say. Okay. And but back in those days, it was you were dedicated. And Fred Astaire saying that she never cried. I'm sure that with as dedicated as people were at the time, even then, I can even remember oh shoot, I'm gonna blank on his name. Nureyev. Rudolph Nureyev. Amazing dancer. I highly recommend finding anything you can find. He was on the Muppet Show. And, but he was fantastic. And one of his partners was Margot Fonteyn, and they worked so well together. Well, there's one, what made me a fan was she was up on her toes. She's not a short gal, and she was up on her point shoes, and she had her arms over her head. And there's like this much between them, and so she had her arms over her head like this, and he leapt over her. This much was between them, and I'm just like, you can't be serious. This guy's amazing. So, yeah, he was brilliant. Well, I've heard horror stories about the practice sessions, because he fiery Russian, and he had an idea in his head. Well, when it didn't come together, he would throw I guess things were thrown out the window and everything. He never hurt anybody, but he scared people. So yeah, I totally get it, and I'm sure even back in vaudeville days and everything, practice could be just as bad. We never hear about it, but still. And so when he says that she never cried, she didn't break. She was a tough cookie. And so that's high praise coming from Freddie. And so the fact that Fred Astaire gave her such high praise means a lot. I mean, he praised his other former dancers as well. I mean, think about it. He had Audrey Hepburn for, I'm pretty sure they danced in the movie that they did together. I don't remember. I always cross them. The movie that he did, he wasn't in. What was that one? Daddy Longlegs, and I always want to put Audrey Hepburn in that movie, but I'm pretty sure that that's not the movie that she's in. I'm terrible. But I don't think that they danced in the movie that they're in together. But there's movies that Gene Kelly did, like Inherit the Wind, and that's about the Scopes case. And yeah, he played, he was with the attorney, and he didn't dance at all. It surprises people that he didn't dance. There was no dancing in it. No. But yeah, so I don't think they dance well. I'll figure it out. But I do. I cross that movie so much. I always think that Audrey Hepburn's in that movie, and she's not. But anyway, he worked with so many people, and for him to praise Ginger Rogers like that, it means a lot. Now the other thing, because of her vaudeville background and Broadway background, and um, and that. Now the other thing is, of course, the costume. Okay, now in Top Hat, she has the feather dress, or as they call it, the peacock dress. And I believe that's the same one. You have to understand that it does bleed into itself sometimes in my mind. But I think that's the same one, the peacock dress and the feather dress. Now, the problem was that when it came to that dress, the feathers would fall. She really wanted that dress for that scene, and there's a reason for it. Now, it's going to sound like she was a big drama queen. And but there's method to her madness when you think about it. So they told her it's not going to work because you guys are going to be falling, and we can't have that. We can't have broken limbs everywhere. Insurance reasons. No. And but she threw fits about it. She threatened to leave if she didn't get this. Her costume designer, Bernard Newman. Now, he did say that she was pretty difficult when it came to her costumes, but he did praise her on the fact that she knew what she was doing. When you sit back and actually, later on in life, he said that, you sit back and you actually think about it. She knew what she was doing with her dancing and everything. There was a point. And especially when they were trying to get her to not use the peacock dress, they actually told her, well, we'll use an outfit from the last movie you were in. Why would you do that? I mean, I understand that it's the Depression and everything, so you're kind of recycling stuff and all of that, but come on. When it's Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, you want fresh and new. When you go and see them, you don't want to go to a movie and see a costume that was in the last movie that they were in. No. I mean, when it's a superhero like Iron Man or something, you expect it. But not Freddy and Ginger. No. Absolutely not. So, and she was livid. I mean, she was set on the fact that this dress was going to happen. Well, so Bernard Newman had a heck of a time, but he made it happen. Now you have to think that there was layers of feathers around her legs, and that's weight around her legs. But she was kicking up high. You remember the routine, and especially that big finale where she's kicking up high before she falls back. That's tough to do. I know. When you've got to kick your legs up like that and you've got that weight, it's a big obstacle. Okay, that's evil genius right there. There was a reason that she was throwing fits because, you think about it. Fred Astaire, yes, he's a genius at tap dancing. There's never been anyone like he was an actual tap dancer. James Cagney and Bob Hope and Bing Crosby and them, they were just hoofers. That's all they were. She wasn't a hoofer. She was working. I mean, the fact that she had that costume with layered feathers around her legs to weight as weight. Explain again the long dress. Now, there's also the whole thing with her having lead weights sewn into this. Yeah, that was a real thing. It's not a myth. It was a real thing because you think about it, it's again an obstacle to make her work around an obstacle. And you think about all those costumes that she had where she had to work. She so basically she was practicing while dancing. While dancing in front of the the camera. Now, the one thing that I am completely going to debunk, because it's just irritating, and especially uh, because my dance instructor was a professional dancer, and it really irritated her when we would have dancers come and they would get their new toe shoes. They would work up and they would get their new toe shoes, and they would try to actually destroy their feet because that's what Hollywood said dancers did, especially when Center Stage came in. When Center Stage was released, we had a lot of those dancers when they got their new point shoes. They were trying to get their feet to bleed. And my ballet instructor was tearing her hair out trying to make the girls understand you do not do that. Blisters on your feet, yeah, it's going to happen. I mean, I have scars on my toes because of that, but oh my gosh. Now, there's been the whole thing of she would dance until her feet bled and there were pools of blood and everything else. Okay, think about this logically. If she did that with every practice session, she wouldn't be able to walk. She would have had to have corrective surgery on her feet. And I don't believe for a damn second that Fred Astaire or anyone else who worked with her would have let her do that. Because you're destroying nerve endings and blood vessels in your feet. Nobody ever stopped to think about that. Who made up something that stupid? Honestly. Yeah, you're going to get bruised and you're going to get blisters, but come on. Every single practice session? No, absolutely not. Pools of blood? I don't know. Absolutely no. No. For you to really think that that's going to happen, that's a Hollywood piece of bullshit. And if she were really that dumb to do that, Fred Astaire would not praise her the way that he does or did. It's not because that's and if I'm going to be bombarded with, well, back in the day they didn't. No, back in the day they had more common sense. If your feet are bleeding and sitting in pools of blood, you know to stop and not do it again. And people are, because she was an icon to classic cinema. And if she's hurting her feet like that, they would say, don't do it again. We can't I mean, she's insurance. I don't understand where this came from. And you have to think about it. She would be in the hospital. She wouldn't be able to walk. She would have been in a wheelchair. Considering how often she practiced with her dance partners. It just, for as much as that myth goes on, saying that all her practice sessions she danced until there were pools of blood and everything else, she would have had corrective surgery. She would, and her feet would have been mangled. So no, it never happened. It's just a myth. It's just something somebody made up, and you guys fell for it. Nobody stopped to think, no, that never happened. So she had vaudeville training. She had Broadway training. And Fred Astaire praised her until the day he died. Again, I'll have to find out that one. I do. I always, and it seems like it's uh well, I know I'm going to say the wrong name. But I'll say in the description what one it is. But he did do a movie with Audrey Hepburn, and it could be that there is absolutely no dancing in that one, because it seems like there's a couple movies that he doesn't do any dancing at all, much like Gene Kelly with that Inherit the Wind, and which is about the Scopes trial, and but anyway, yeah, because he had several partners over the years, but he really praised Ginger, and saying things like she never cried, and she never broke down, and so she was tough, and then other people saying that she was able to flow between the dancing and going back into the acting, so they didn't have to waste the filming, and her costume, yeah, it may seem like she was a big drama queen because, she's not getting the costume she wants, but there's a reason that she wanted it. She had strong legs, not just because she wasn't a hoofer. Not like James Cagney. I love James Cagney very much. I really do. I love his gangster movies, for we know that. And I love watching Bob Hope and Bing Crosby dance. I especially love Seven Little Foys because of the fact that there's a scene in there where Bob Hope and James Cagney dance together, and and so, but I don't think a lot of people understand that Gene Kelly loved Fred Astaire. He absolutely loved him, and for as arrogant as he was, and he was. I mean, there's just no getting around it. He was pretty arrogant, and but he did. He absolutely loved Fred Astaire, and they only got to dance one time, which is it's too bad. But Ginger, she she worked her ass off. And it really bothers me that someone would say that she was bad because I mean, you can have your opinion that you don't like her. I mean, there are people that I'm not a fan of, and that's no big deal, People have their opinions. And but when you say that someone is bad because of a dress that they wear, no. I mean, that's a weak excuse. And I don't believe that you are a former dancer because there's no. So anyway, I do defend Ginger Rogers on on the on what I said. And I mean, especially because Freddie praised her until he died.